Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Out of Ignorance. We're on episode 13, inshallah. And today I met with a sister, and we're going to be just discussing about her experiences. She's a new revert, and she's by the name of Sister Martina. So I want to get Sister Martina to introduce herself. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Martina.
Walaikum assalam. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Hope you're doing well, Sister Martina.
I am. Thank you.
Sister Martina, would you mind introducing yourself to people? I guess.
My name is Martina. I am 21 years old and I have a 2-year-old daughter, Cecilia. I'm currently a student in TUD, Blanchardstown campus, studying social care, doing my level 8, going into my second year.
MashaAllah.
So this is me.
And Sister Martina, I heard your reverts as well for how long now?
I'd say 6 months officially.
6 months. Oh, MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Yeah. See, it was quite the journey. Originally, I'm actually Polish by blood, and growing up when I was at home, I mainly lived with my dad, and my dad was very Islamophobic all my life, so I grew up in a very Islamophobic household. The only things I'd ever hear about Islam were very negative things.
Then how did you hear about Islam?
So initially, I had no clue about Islam at all. All I knew was what my dad would tell me about, of course, the negatives. Which is Muslim people are terrorists and Islam is all about killing people and such. But then it was actually about a year ago now. I started traveling over to the UK just for a little holiday.
Yeah.
And over there, because in Ireland here, I never really had any friends who were Muslim. I might have had a couple of acquaintances, but I wouldn't have been close with them. Whereas when I traveled over to UK, I started meeting a lot of the Muslim community over there, and through forming friendships with a lot of people over there, I started to learn about Islam. Where initially, when I had started these friendships, I would have wanted to maybe go for like a drink or do this, or oh, let's go to this restaurant, and my friends would say, oh no, I can't, it's not halal, or oh no, like I don't drink alcohol. I hadn't had a clue. I didn't know anything about Islam, and because of this, I felt okay, like I really care about these people, like these are my friends. I want to be a better friend. I need to learn so that I can actually be a good friend and be supportive of that and not put them into these situations which I knew myself must have been a bit uncomfortable for them,
Yeah.
So I started learning, and through learning, a lot of questions that I've always had my entire life have been answered, really. Where like growing up, my dad, he had us be we were Jehovah's Witnesses for a while, and then we were we went between like 4 or 5 different Christian churches. So growing up, I was always in some sort of religion, but it never felt right. I never felt good. I always felt very anxious, and I'd have questions that would never be answered. Instead, the answers that I'd kind of get, they would be more so people's kind of ideas or fantasies, really, as I called them, of how they're kind of explaining my questions to me. Whereas when I started learning about Islam, any question that I had, I was shown exactly in the Quran where it explains what I wanted to know. And this for me, I was like, okay, well, this book was written, a long, long time ago, and here are all my answers in this. And that's when I knew. And when I heard the, Quran being recited, I still remember, I got goosebumps all over my body, and, I got very upset. I started to cry because it was like, I just felt peaceful. It was just this quiet and peace, and I had never had that before, and that's when I knew.
And yeah, did you know, like prior to you being Muslim, did you have how was your upbringing? Would you say? I know you said you lived with your dad and he was very Islamophobic. How was that?
It was very hard, my upbringing wasn't the best, if I'm being honest with you. Growing up, my mom and dad, when I was very young, when they were still together, and they were often fighting and arguing. My mom, she wasn't very faithful to my dad. And often this would cause, my dad's aggressive side to come out in the home. And, we were constantly dealing with the Gardaí coming to the doorstep and neighbours getting involved. And it was really tough, so sometimes social workers might have had to put myself and my older sister into maybe a foster family for the weekend. Sometimes, we'd be at home for the week, foster family for the weekend, or it might be foster family for the week and we'd go home for the weekend and they would call it respite, but it was very confusing for a young child. I think I was about 5 or 6 years old when it started happening. So I was very confused by it. And then, my dad left and myself and my sister, we were with mum. But mum was very neglectful of us and, we weren't taken care of properly as children should be. My mum, she'd kind of have a new partner every so often. And, one time I remember I was about 7.5, maybe 8 years old, and mum just left €50 note on the table and she went to Portugal for a week, with one of her partners and just left my older sister who was 6 years older to take care of me. So it definitely wasn't easy.
Sorry, how old was your sister?
She was 6 years older than me.
6 years old, okay.
Yeah, so she'd be about 27 now, 28 at this point. She's currently living in Italy, so we don't really keep contact, unfortunately. She's just after all of these, family experiences, we we were not in contact, unfortunately. She moved on with her life, I guess. But this is it, and he was living in Poland at the time. He left the country when he kind of heard from a friend what was happening with my mum here. He came back, and I think it took about 1.5 to 2 years of in and out of, Dolphin House family courts for my dad to actually gain custody over us, despite, all the evidence that he had of abuse and neglect going on in my mother's home. It was a very tough situation to be in, because the social worker that myself and my sister were actually appointed at the time, he was having a relationship with my mother. So, of course...
Wait, the social care worker was...
Yeah, so
conflict of interest.
Yeah, myself and my sister were appointed a social worker. And one day I remember coming home from school and I caught him and my mother upstairs in the bedroom. So it wasn't great. I was confused. I didn't really know what to think of it. I didn't really know what was happening. And then, when I told my sister, it was definitely very confusing. But I guess as I kind of grew older, I started to understand why everything happened the way it happened, where despite, everything that we would have reported to the social workers, reported to Gardaí, we remained in my mother's care, even though she was not fit to be a parent at the time due to many different things, such as mental health problems. But unfortunately...
So after you found out about social, was he still your social worker after that? Or did you get
yeah, so no, he still our social worker. Unfortunately, I haven't had a great experience with Tusla. My experience with Tusla is that despite whatever the child is saying to them, they still do whatever they want to do. We're just kind of seen as we're kids, so our voices aren't heard. Our social workers are supposed to be the people who are appointed to speak on our behalf and be the voice for us. But of course, my abuse this power, and unfortunately, when this happens, that's when the children just kind of, they don't really go down the right path and they're not being cared or looked after properly.
You mentioned that Tusla. Were you ever in residential care with Tusla, or did they?
I was, yes. So when I was 15, I was actually placed into emergency care in a foster family out in Selbridge. This was the beginning of everything. And when I was living in the foster family, I have to say they were a very good family, and I owe a lot to them. They played a huge part in who I am today. But unfortunately, I got, I guess, moved into another placement, which was really tough for me, because I was going through a lot of big moments in my life. I guess I was in fifth year at the time. I was just turned 15. I was scared. I didn't really have my family around. My relationship with my dad had broken down a long time ago. Things were very up in the air at home, and I was in this foster family. I felt safe there, and before I knew, I just got up and moved. And unfortunately, this is my experience with that. where children, they get put into a placement and they don't even get given time to settle into the placement. Because
What,
before you know it, you just get told, pack your bags, you're being moved on tomorrow.
why did they
You
move
know?
you? Is it because the family don't want you, or
No, the family, they were amazing. They actually wanted to foster me for a long-term placement. But unfortunately, basically the situation at the time was I had actually left school because of everything that had gone on at home. I said, I don't want to finish my fifth year. And so I left. But when I got moved into foster family in Selbridge, all the way from Dublin, I said, if I'm able to stay here, I will return to school. But I guess my social worker at the time had another plan for me. And so instead, I got moved into a foster family in Glasnevin. I'm not quite sure why they did that. I remember I tried to argue with them and say, why am I being moved to Glasnevin? It's very close to where my mother lives, it's very close to where my dad lived. And at the time, it wasn't very safe for me to live near them.
Mm.
So I was very confused, but unfortunately, I never got the answers that I was ever looking for. If anything, I kind of felt like a toy, just kind of being put here and I'm being moved the next day, and I never got asked, how do you feel about this? Are you happy here? It was nothing like this. I got moved into a foster family then that were verbally and emotionally abusive towards me, and that was,
Were you the only foster child they had?
yeah, I was. Unfortunately, I wasn't the only child they ever fostered. They have fostered children before this. But I was the only child they had at the time. It was an elderly couple who they had three of their own children, but they were adults, and it was very tough. I wasn't allowed to have a mobile phone living in their house. I wasn't allowed to be connected to the internet in their house. I wasn't allowed to watch television in their house. I wasn't allowed to eat sweets. Where I wasn't allowed to put jam on my toast. I wasn't allowed to put sugar in my tea or coffee. I wasn't even allowed to have coffee. I wasn't allowed to wear things like a pair of leggings, because my foster mother at the time saw this as inappropriate clothing. I'd be often shouted at. I had a set meal menu, I guess you could say, where in the morning I would wake up and I'd either get a bowl of cereal or two slices of toast and a cup of tea. I'm not allowed to have anything in between. And then for lunch, I might get something like a bit of soup with some toast, or maybe she'd cut up some fruit for me. And then I'd have a big dinner after this, at around maybe 5. And that was it. I'd get a tea time at 7, and I'm not allowed to eat anything else. I
Mm.
wasn't allowed any chocolate. I wasn't even allowed to go visit my friends. All that I was allowed to do was wake up, go to school, and come back. If I finished school at, say, 3:45, if I'm not home by 4:30, the latest, I get called, I get threatened that they're going to call the guards, they're going to kick me out. It was absolute madness at the time. I was being monitored, like every move that I made was being monitored. I'd be all the time told, go to the room and study. All that they wanted me to do was just sit in a little box room with a single bed that had a desk and a wardrobe. Apparently, I wasn't allowed to listen to music. I wasn't allowed to do anything like that. I remember my 16th birthday came, and I wasn't even allowed to go and dance for my birthday.
Mm.
My parents, you're in a foster family, you're supposed to get a weekly allowance, just going straight to my foster parents, and I didn't see any of this money.
Mm.
They kept me all the time. They weren't spending money on me. When I needed new clothes, it was a big huff and puff to even go and get my socks. When I reported to my social worker how they're speaking to me, or how my foster mother is making comments about my weight, and she's making comments about old self-harm scars that I might have on my arms. When I reported this, nothing was done. And then when I reported they were having parties in the house, I was told to stay up in the room. There was drunk people walking around the house. Once again, nothing was done. I was at the time I was attending Get a House counselling in Ballymun, and I was reporting everything weekly to my counsellor. Things were so bad that I got to a point where my counsellor actually refused to release me into the care of my foster mother, because she was afraid that if I go home, I will hurt myself over all of this. It
Mm.
was really toxic for my mental health. It's not a healthy environment for any child to be in there. It was definitely very tough to be in the situation where I was constantly being spoken down to, I was being controlled, how I spoke, how I sat, my posture, everything. I couldn't do anything right, apparently. It's like to them, like they were doing me this huge favor of letting me stay with them. They weren't very nice people to be around.
How,
And
sorry, how did you? I know it sounds like you've been through a lot of trauma, and obviously made these experiences have impacted your mental health. How did you cope with your mental health? Did the counselor help? Do you think from your house?
it's been a bumpy road, a little bit like a roller coaster when it comes to mental health, because I initially attended Pieta House, and after this, I was attending CAMS, which is a children's mental
Yeah.
health service. So I attended there for almost two years, and then, from there I was back in counseling, and I attended multiple places for counseling, and counseling definitely helped in order to kind of have someone there to support me and to have someone who understands me from a different perspective. It's different speaking to a friend than it is to speak to someone who's actually qualified in this,
That's true.
But definitely it's been tough because the placements that I've been put into, they were never very supportive around mental health, which they should have
Placements?
been.
What do you mean? Sorry, what do you mean by placements?
So I was initially in emergency foster care. I was then in a long-term foster care, and when this placement broke down due to my mental health, I was then put into, I don't know, you've probably never heard of it. It's called Lefroy House. It's basically under 18s hostel where children from as young as 12 go into, where you're basically kicked out from 9:30 in the morning until 5:30 p.m. Sometimes 5:30, and mostly there 5:30, where you're just left to roam the streets.
Wait in all this time did you after I don't want to use like there's so much things happening in your life until things impact your mental health and everything else. How did you like just find Islam? I don't understand. So difficult. Is it
Yeah,
your journey from the UK, or did someone introduce you to Islam here, or did you? Are you told me you were in TUD and
yeah, in
from
Pakistan.
college. Did someone talk to you about Islam from college, or what was it?
No, it was mainly my friends from the United Kingdom, that I just wanted to be a better friend for them. And that's where I kind of, embraced Islam, I guess you could say. But definitely, my experiences with Tusla, I did not think that I'd ever, come across Islam or embrace it in the ways that I did.
Mm.
It's just madness. It's been hectic. I haven't had a break.
How's the situation now? Would you say?
Yeah, this the situation now is a lot better. I'm living with my daughter. We're happy. I was very young when I had to move out. I was 17.
Mm.
So since then, I was living in house shares until I was 18, and then I moved into, my own little studio. And, from there I was just living on my own and doing everything on my own.
May I make it easy for you?
um, yeah, it's been tough, because I haven't had support, especially when I was 17 when I had to move out. I supposed to be going into a long-term placement, residential placement, after being in short-term residential. But unfortunately, I had been assigned a new social worker, and this new social worker, I guess you could say, had a vision of what he wanted for me. And so he, because my parents are Polish, and I didn't have contact with my father, and my social worker wasn't really fond of my dad very much, so he mainly communicated with my mum. And so when I was 17, instead of putting me into a long-term placement to make things easier for Tusla, my social worker had decided that I should move out on my own. And so what happened was he was speaking to my mum without me. Obviously, I wasn't even aware this was happening. And him and my mum came to basically an agreement where my mum is going to pay my rent until I'm 18 in private rented accommodation. So yeah, this happened, and my mum was under the impression though that by law she has to do this for me as she's my mother. This is the impression that my social worker gave her. that she is required by law to do this. She was not aware that she doesn't have to, or that she shouldn't even, because my social worker was very convincing, and my mum believed him. And so she did this. When I was told this, I still remember having the meeting, and I was very upset. And I said, I don't feel comfortable doing this. I haven't had great experiences with people growing up. I was very shy, you could say, and very nervous. Especially around new groups of people, and from being in some different placements. I knew that okay, I won't do well with this. Because I knew what I need for my mental health is I need to be around someone. I need to have someone looking out for me. I need to have the adult supervision that I just didn't get. And there's an organization called Epic. They're supposed to advocate for young people, who are in care, but unfortunately I haven't had a great experience with them either. I rang them. I had meetings set up. When I went and I explained my situation to them, I explained to them that I'm afraid. I'm alone. I don't know what to do. I don't feel comfortable. Nothing was done. They said that they will call my social worker, and I don't know what happened on the phone call, but they came back and just told me that whatever my social worker has decided for me, that's what's going to happen. And so I didn't have a say in whether or not I was okay to move out on my own. And when I did move out on my own, I didn't have any support with this. I didn't have anyone to give me a lift with all my stuff. It was me and my friends taking the bus with bags of my stuff. And when I moved in, I moved into a house share. It was a husband and a wife, and they were renting a room, and I moved in. And when I moved in, I wasn't working. I didn't have money. I didn't have savings. I didn't have food. I didn't have anything. And I remember clear as day, being in my friend's house, and we called my social worker with her mum beside us, and I said to my social worker, I don't have food. I'm after moving in. I don't have money to buy food. What do I do? This is on a Friday evening, just before 5, just before social work is finished, and he said to me that, well, there's nothing I can do. Where are you? In a friend's house? Well, I'm sure that they can help you with just giving you some food to do for the weekend or some money. And I was kind of shook. I was like, what? I just turned 17. I haven't had a clue about the real world. I don't even know how to use a washing machine. Don't even know how to cook spaghetti, So I remember I got very upset, and he said that the only kind of help that he can give me is Monday morning, the earliest. And so Monday morning came, and I got a call from some volunteers for St. Vincent de Paul charity. And that's when I started receiving food vouchers, where I'd only get a €20 voucher every week. And it'd be for the likes of Dunnes Stores or maybe Super Value, as I lived in Walkinstown at the time. And this is really tough because Super Value, it's not the cheapest shop. I couldn't get much. At the time, I was doing my level 5 in childcare, and, they were topping up my leap card just enough for me to be able to get to college and back. And that was it. That's all I had, food vouchers. And if I lost a voucher for that week, that was it. I had to try and survive with what I had, in the cupboards. And it was very tough. I mainly was surviving off bread and noodles. It was a very upsetting time for me. I lost a lot of weight. I wasn't healthy, and I started falling into bad habits more. I started drinking a lot more with friends, and attending parties, and I started smoking. Taking other drugs, and it was a very tough time for me because I didn't have the adult supervision. I didn't have someone to support me. I didn't have someone to help me, or even help me carry, a bag of food. I was just on my own. And on top of this, I was doing my best with my childcare level 5. And it was a hard experience to go through because my social worker who was supposed to be there wasn't there. I did try to call him. He didn't pick up.
I have a question. In terms of now the Muslim in 6 months, how is the? I know you said a lot of your friends are from England, but have you tried to mingle with the Muslim community here in Ireland?
Yes, actually, I didn't really have much contact with the Muslim community here in Ireland until the March for Palestine in May. On the 15th of May, I attended, and I remember we were all walking, and I turned to the right, and there was a girl there, and I thought, oh no, I think she's on her own, but I was with my friends, so I turned to her and we started speaking. And she actually ended up introducing me to her friends, who then introduced me to a couple of more people, and this is how I actually, Yeah, it was amazing. That's how I got to kind of branch out within the Muslim community here in Ireland. And I speak to them regularly and I have regular contact with them. And it's great having the support, because of course, having, female friends there to kind of support me, on my journey, it's a really
Mm.
big thing for me. So, yeah,
Have you,
yeah,
you said you were, sorry, what college did you say you were in studying at the moment?
I'm in TUD in
Yeah.
Dublin.
So TED you have
Manchester.
it, and you're in your second year. Yeah.
Yeah, going into
So,
second year now.
so means last year you weren't able to go to college because of COVID and all. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I was in my first year when I fell pregnant with my daughter, and then I took a year out to take care of her. And after this, it was when I went back and I actually repeated my first year. So I was doing my first year on my laptop online with my daughter on my lap because the crashes, they were all closed due to COVID. So it was a lot of multitasking going on, but we did it. And I did very well in all of my exams, so I'm very happy. My grades were amazing. So
Okay. So that's good. Sorry, I have one question I forgot. Oh yeah. How do you keep up learning about? Are you still learning about the religion?
of course, I am every
So,
day.
so in what ways you learn? Do you learn YouTube or do you listen to
Yes,
some speakers?
I watch a lot of YouTube videos. There's also I did a course. There's a lady called Kalisha Bennett on Instagram. I found her through a podcast on Spotify one day, and she actually has a course which is called Developing Diamonds, and I really just highly recommend this to everybody. This is what I started with. It teaches you all about the foundations of Islam, and she's the lady herself. She's amazing. You can contact her through the DMs on Instagram. She replies pretty quickly. She's just so lovely. She actually sent me over my Quran. She's located in Sydney, I think. So she sent me my first Quran, my prayer mat,
Oh,
which was, yeah, it was great. I was really appreciated. This is what I originally started off with, and every day I try and I read the Quran. I speak to my friends, and one of my friends, her dad, he's great as well. So he actually does a lot of Quran studies with me, and I'm currently learning the Arabic alphabet as well. So,
that's good. That's
just,
so like
yeah,
Alif Bata. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
everything. At the
That's
moment, I know from Alif back down to Ra. So I'm currently learning how to write it because my friend's dad said there's no point in me kind of
memorizing it.
jumping through
Yeah.
everything. Yeah,
Exactly.
and just take it slowly, get it right the first time. It's the
That
best way.
and today your friends is your friend's dad is a Quranic teacher or
Yes, he was actually the imam in a mosque here in Dublin a number of years ago.
almost?
So
Do you know what mosque?
um, I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Couldn't tell
No,
you, but
no
he
problem.
he was telling me a while back. But I was kind of like, this is the first time that I was meeting him, and there was so much going through my head.
Hmm. Yeah, no problem. No problem. Have you been to any mosque actually in Ireland?
No, unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to due to COVID.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so that was very tough. But after my travels to the UK, I got in touch with the Islamic Relief here in Ireland.
Yeah, yeah.
I emailed them, because this was during COVID times, and I wanted to learn more about Islam, and I had no way of doing so. I didn't know anyone here in Ireland, and I was just stuck in my apartment. And I contacted them, and I wrote an email to them. I explained my situation, and I told them that I'm just looking for a bit of support, really. And so, when they
Yeah.
emailed me back, they provided me with a lady's phone number. She was really sweet. She actually did some Quran studies with me through the phone. This was back in 2020, so late 2020. So, despite COVID, I was still getting the Quran studies done through phone calls with her, and she was amazing. Her name was Aisha, and she was just really amazing. She just took me under her wing, and no matter what time, day or night it was, I'd have questions popping into my head, different things. I'd be comparing what I learned, as a Christian or as a Jehovah's Witness to, what I'm learning now in Islam. And, I could call her and she'd answer every question that I had. There was never a time where she didn't have the answer, or there was never a time where she didn't make time for me. And that was definitely huge for me, that I could really just lean on her for the help and the support and the knowledge.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, especially when you're doing something, to always have a mentor. It's very important to guide you and to help shape you and all. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about in terms of like how you have you been taught like how you pray and how you do all that? Because you said I know you're only 6 months into Islam, or not?
Yes.
So have you been taught like how you pray Salah and all that?
Unfortunately, I haven't had anyone here to teach me other than YouTube, my best friend.
Subhanallah.
You know, yeah, so it's been tough, but I've basically what I did was I initially started with praying in English, and now that I've been learning Arabic, I've printed it off, and I have a sheet beside me that I kind of look at to try and guide me, so I'm doing my best, and every day I'm learning more, and I've been just relying on YouTube.
Also, yeah. So YouTube, like I remember I was interviewing someone else who was a Revert, and he said when he used to pray in YouTube, there's a to know that when they do the salah, they do physically, he just copies it while he does his own salah, which is an inventive way. I was also thinking like you mentioned like you're watching YouTube videos and do you watch YouTube videos of speakers or do you know any Muslim speakers that you listen to or you like or that people share with you?
Could you say that again? Sorry.
So no problem. I was saying that in terms of YouTube videos, you say you like to
Yes.
watch YouTube videos about Islam and you're learning. Do you have any specific speaker you listen to or
No,
anyone?
no, I
Anyone?
don't. It's kind of I tend to just type something in every day. Something pops into my head, like I like to think a lot about everything every day, and something might pop into my head. So I'll just type it into YouTube, and the next thing you know, I fall down a YouTube rabbit hole. I click on one video. From there, there's suggestions. I click onto another one, and that's kind of how it happens for me. But definitely someone that I do kind of look up to though about these things is the lady I mentioned earlier, Kalisha Bennett. She regularly posts on her Facebook page as well as her Instagram page different videos speaking of different topics, especially topics that the youth can really relate to. And she's very interesting. She explains everything, and you can contact her with any questions that you have. And she does live videos on Facebook a lot of the time. So when it comes to one person, it'd be her. When it comes to YouTube, it's kind of a YouTube rabbit hole of everything.
That's true. I was thinking of in terms of nowadays you and your daughter are you gonna I know is your plans to raise your daughter as a Muslim and
Of
how
course.
yeah and and how the question I'm trying to ask sorry I'm trying to I just forget questions very easily.
It's okay.
The question I was gonna ask is how do you think like Islam now has impacted the way you think and your morality and how has that improved compared to when you were a Christian?
Oh, I have to say, that's an excellent question. So basically, when I was a Christian, and this isn't just me, this was the other, young people within my church. They weren't really very conscious about the clothing that they wore. You think you would be, but as young people, teenagers, you're not really. A lot of them would kind of have this act, of their kind of goody two shoes within the church walls, but when it comes to being outside the church, they kind of they do their own thing, that their parents wouldn't necessarily know about. But for me personally, before I embraced Islam, I was drinking a lot of alcohol. I was very young when I started to drink alcohol, and I think growing up here in Ireland, especially, alcohol is a very normal thing.
Yeah.
When
Mm-hmm.
you go to meet with a friend, it's kind of like, oh, hey, let's go get, a pint, or oh, let's go get some cocktails or something, girls' night. Um, and then as well with the food that I eat, as a Christian, I never really ate pork anyways, so there wasn't much change there. But definitely I became a lot more conscious now, whereas as a Christian, even though I didn't eat pork, I wouldn't really check the ingredients on a lot of stuff, as long as it wasn't kind of like a set of pork chops in front of me, or like some sausages, or rashers. Whereas now I do check the ingredients a lot, and when I was a Christian, I was still smoking cigarettes, I was drinking the alcohol, I was smoking weed, before I had my daughter, Whereas when I embraced Islam, it was like everything kind of changed, I started being a lot more conscious of, but why am I doing this? God is watching me. God can see me right now. Why am I doing this in front of God? I should not be behaving this way. It's kind of like this voice inside my head, this guilt. And anytime, I know it might sound a bit weird, but anytime I was doing something that was haram, it's like I thought about God a lot more than during this time than I would, any other time, where I was remembering, why am I doing this? I had to kind of think about it a lot deeper, but as well with the clothes that I used to wear, I used to wear, I was never really into revealing clothes, but it was definitely different to what I wear now. I
Okay.
definitely, cover myself a lot more, and even, during the summer, I, try to cover myself as much as possible, really. Whereas before, I didn't really notice it. I didn't really think much of it, of what I was wearing. I never really thought much of what, like, my friends were wearing, or nothing like this, I'm also covered in tattoos from before Islam, of course, and tattoos and piercings. This was kind of like a hobby of mine, you could say. Whereas now, I'm aware I shouldn't be doing it, and I just stayed away from it. And it makes me think about it, it makes me think of, okay, but why don't I do this, and I start to think about things from a health perspective as well, and there's a lot to it. And even, the friends that I used to have before I embraced Islam, unfortunately, a lot of them have kind of turned their backs to me because, of
Because
course,
you're Muslim.
yeah, yeah, I had a best friend. For example, I had a best friend. We were best friends for 7 or 8 years, and when I first told her, that, I'm ready to embrace Islam, she turned around and told me, if I do that, I'm no longer welcome in her home.
Is this the friend that you call the social worker?
No, no, you know, but and this happened, and I don't know why this happened, but it happened, and a lot of my other friends, they just kind of stopped inviting me out to places, and I became a lot more aware of how a lot of my old friends are behaving, such as, excessive drinking and excessive drug use and such. So I've definitely become a lot more conscious of people's lifestyles nowadays, and my own lifestyle.
I have another question for you. What do you think the Muslim community in Ireland can do to help or support you, or do you think the Muslim community we need to do something to support maybe people other like you, like reverts and
I mean, to my experience, any young person who's Muslim in Ireland that I've come across, they've all been amazing. Like really just hands down amazing, super supportive. They have kept in touch with me over social media. They offer me help and support, and it's really been great. But the number one thing I would say is, for someone who might have come from a similar situation to mine, where they might not necessarily have Muslim friends, it would definitely be really helpful to kind of maybe have pages on maybe Instagram or Facebook, social media pages, where young people who are thinking of, embracing Islam can contact other young people, because that for me was a huge thing, that I didn't have support. I didn't know who to turn to, and I took my own initiative and I contacted the Islamic Relief, but maybe not a lot of people might be, keen to do that. Some people might be, a bit nervous or anxious to do so, but I know that if I had come across, a page or, on Instagram or even Facebook for people like myself, I would have definitely just felt relieved, so that's the only thing. But honestly, I have to say, to my experience, people have been so kind and super helpful and just so welcoming.
So like, in terms of like maybe better access for like young reverts to talk to young
Yes,
Muslims. So that's
100%.
I
Yeah.
think I think that's one of the goals. Myself and Udaifa, the co-host, when we started our Regnus, we started about like a year ago, I think so, during COVID, and it was just like first of all to introduce like Muslims, young Muslims, to like Muslim faces and Muslim experiences, and telling them that they're not the only one who feel this way, or not the only way you've dealt with situations such as this, and also to reach out to non-Muslims or new Muslims, and to see all the Muslim people are normal and they have problems, they have their own issues, they have their own lives,
Yes.
but they also worship Allah. So I think that's one of the goals we're trying to have in our ignorance as well.
Yeah. And
Uh,
that's amazing. Wow. I wish I came across this earlier,
uh, I think that's down to us. We have poor social media skills. Our social media
Wow.
skills is terrible. But we're working on that. I was gonna ask again, in terms of now you're Muslim, do any of your family know you're Muslim? Or are you in contact with any of them, your mom, your dad? Or,
So I have on and off contact, I guess you could say, with my dad, Our relationship is a relationship where it's kind of the healthiest at a distance, you know.
I get you, I understand.
But of course, my dad, he loves my daughter very much, and he's an amazing granddad to her.
Mm.
Um, so he's 100% there for my daughter all the time, which is really amazing. He knows that I'm Muslim. I told him, and he wasn't very happy, and he's still not very happy, and we regularly,
Debate.
fall out over this. Unfortunately, my dad, he has a lot to say. He's very old fashioned. He grew up in communist Poland, where he believes
Mm.
that, um, as you can imagine, he believes that his way is right and every other way is wrong. He'll hear one thing on the news, such as even today I was with my dad in his house this morning, and the Polish news were on, and they were speaking about the situation in Afghanistan.
Mhm.
And the first thing I heard was Islamists have taken over Afghanistan and plan to terrorize the country. And I looked and I was like, what? What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing, My dad turned around, he's like, oh, there you go. This is your fan club. I was like, rude, first of all, but my dad will hear something in the news and he'll believe it. He's not much of a person who will do a lot of fact checking, really.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, this is how, in my experience, Polish people are. Polish people, they're like this, and they kind of believe their own thing, and it's a tough topic really to speak about. I don't want to offend anyone here,
Yeah, I understand.
but so this is my dad's opinion on Islam. He believes that, like, he isn't aware of like Sunni or Shias or nothing. And when I try to explain to my dad, it kind of gets too much for him, and he tends to just get a bit annoyed, and doesn't want to listen further. But yeah, it's definitely something that I'm hoping to work on with my dad, but I don't know. But my mom, she also is aware that I'm a Muslim. We don't have any contact. We attempted to have contact a while back, but our relationship, we never really had much of a relationship to begin with, so it's kind of hard to
Is
have
your
contact.
mom so is your mom Polish as well?
Yeah, she's Polish.
Okay.
So it's kind of like meeting a stranger on like WhatsApp. A random person messages you and says, hey, let's go for a coffee. You're kind of sitting there and thinking, what do we talk about? Because you don't know them, and that's how my relationship is with my mom. So unfortunately that's it. But I've been lucky where, the friends that I have now, their families have really embraced me as part of their family. So I'm very lucky and I'm very grateful for this because I know many people don't get this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've been blessed.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I just want to come back to what you're studying in university. After
Yes.
everything you've been through, now you want to study social care. What inspired you? Is it because the mistreatment you didn't have, the lack of treatment or lack of care you didn't have? Is that what inspired you to do?
Um, what's inspired me to study social care is a lot of things. So first things first, the lack of support that I had as a young child in care, but also the amazing support that I did get from certain social care staff that I would have come across. Um, because I've been in multiple placements, and in every placement there would have been some staff that were very supportive, very loving. They would treat you as their own child, but others were not like this, such as, I'll go back to Lefroy House, which has now been shut down. It was located on Eden Key. And I have to say, in my experience, the staff in Lefroy, they were amazing. They did everything for you. They supported you. They gave you their time. They really just gave you their time, whatever you need, whatever kind of support you needed, whether you were angry and you were having, an outburst, they'll give you your space. They weren't pushy, but they were always there and they never ever turned their backs on any of the children that were there. A lot of the children that would have went through the service would often say that, Lefroy House was not a great place to be in. But this is because of obviously we weren't able to stay there during the day. But this has nothing to do with the staff that worked in Lefroy. If anything, if it wasn't for them, Lefroy would have been just a living hell, really. But they were amazing and they were there. And a lot of the staff that I had come across in that place, they were the ones who inspired me to do social care because I thought, someone with all of this baggage like me is coming in here, I'm afraid, I'm alone, I'm scared. Like there's just so much going through my head. I don't know anything. And they're coming here and they're being so loving to me, they're really being so affectionate towards me and they're giving me the kind of affection that I grew up not having. And it was all very new for me. But to see people who didn't know me be like this towards me and show me that it is okay, and to show me that there are people there who will take care of me, that made me think, well, if I'm getting this now, there's so many other kids that I would have come across in my other placements who would have needed it but didn't get it, and to compare all the different placements I would have been in and to compare the different, social care workers that I would have worked with. Some of them weren't great, some of them were just amazing, and they're the ones who inspired me to go into this field because I want to be like them. I want to make the change that they have made in my life. And for example, when I had my daughter, I started attending a teen parent program in Kulak, TSP Kulak, and I have to say they were amazing. I had a family support worker, her name was Liz, and when I say I have never met such an amazing woman in my life, she wasn't very far off from my age. I think she was like 4 or 5 years older than me, maybe. But I met her during one of the hardest times of my life. I was going through an abusive relationship. I just had my daughter. I was afraid, I was about to become homeless again, and I met her, and she supported me. She became my friend. She was there for me anytime I needed someone to speak to. She helped me find out all about my entitlements. She made sure that I was not alone. She made sure that I was safe all the time. And she made such a change in my life that is what made me think I need to go back and finish my social care degree. Because, if she's after doing all of this for me, I know that I can do the same and give back. So for me, I feel like it is my turn to give back what I have learned over the years. And hopefully, make a change in someone else, like even if it's just one or two people, but it's still something, because that's what I would have liked to think that they did. That when they were studying social care, they thought, let me go and make a change in someone's life. And
Yeah.
luckily, I was that person whose life they changed. So I'm very grateful for this, and it's why I'm going into social care, to give back and to use my experiences and hopefully make them into something useful. Use all the knowledge and help someone else really that's going through this, and to try and be a voice for those who don't have a voice and
That's
advocate for those who are just pushed aside the way I was.
that's amazing. That's amazing. I myself, I just graduated from psychology, so I'm a psychology graduate.
Oh,
Yeah, so I've especially in the Muslim community, especially young people now, there's this like an increase in mental health issues
yes.
experiences and how we deal with experiences. So I just want to, from my similar to you, I've seen from friends, from in my personal life and from family, and how mental health can impact. And so I just want to become a psychologist to help people, just like you were saying. Uh, so inshallah, that works out well, inshallah, in for the future.
Yeah, it's amazing, I think this is what we need. We need a lot more kind of young people to become hands-on around these issues, because we're growing up. Like, I know, for example, you can have someone who's a social worker, but they might not be aware of the times that we live in.
Mhm.
We're a lot more aware of the times that we live in, the
That's
things that
true.
go on nowadays within, the younger generation. And that's why I think, really young people need to become a lot more hands-on in these sectors,
Yeah.
because we need more people who understand and more people who are willing to, approach something with an open mind and an open heart instead of just being stuck in their ideas, of how things are.
I don't know, maybe I'll ask you this question here, but I was going to ask how has Islam helped your mental health? I talked about your moral character, how has Islam improved that, but how does have Islam helped your mental health? Because I know I can't say you after all that trauma, everything's gone. That's
Yeah.
unrealistic. But how's Islam? How's you? How is that God is there and God is watching you? God won't let and will never leave you alone. How's that helped you and solidified your mental health?
Um, so growing up, I grew up very much alone, but ever since I've actually found Islam, I I suddenly didn't have that feeling of being alone anymore. It was a void. It was like in my chest, in my heart. I always felt this void. There was this anxious feeling, this kind of suffocating feeling at the same time. But when I found Islam, it's like it went away. And the more I started learning about Islam, I started to understand why my life happened the way it has happened. Whereas in the past, I was a very angry teenager, I had a lot of anger in me. I didn't understand why anything happened. Whereas after I found Islam, I started to understand why, and I started to understand, that Allah would not, burden a soul with more than what it can
Mhm.
take. And so I started seeing life from a completely different perspective. I no longer had this victim mindset, I started seeing it as this is what happened to me. But in my opinion, this happened so that I can use this and really use it as energy and fuel, for me to just make a change.
Mm.
And in terms of my mental health, I was very young when I started to self-harm, and this was an ongoing problem for me for, during my teenage years. And when I found Islam, it's anytime, I had a moment where, I felt really low or upset, and I turned to, to prayer, and I'd make dua, and, this completely just calmed me down. It
Mm.
was just, and it's hard to explain, but all these like worries and the tension that you kind of might feel in your shoulders, everything's gone. I feel peaceful, and now I don't wake up in the morning feeling anxious. I make sure to pray, as much as possible, and I just suddenly don't have this anxious feeling in me anymore. I'm not dealing with depression, you know. I still have some certain symptoms of PTSD, from my childhood, but I deal with them completely different. My life when it comes to my emotions, it's not a roller coaster anymore. It's like a river. It's calm. It's like a little stream. It's a lot different. Now any problem that I might come across, instead of feeling overwhelmed by it, I don't feel overwhelmed at all, because I know at the end of the day, whatever is good for me will happen. And even
Mm.
if something happens that might not be necessarily pleasant to deal with, it's happening for a reason, and God knows this reason. And so I trust it. I trust the process and I'm patient, and that's all I can do.
Seems like, yeah, I've been hearing some hadith. You know what hadith means?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you've been learning some because I hear some remnants of it. I was like, okay, she knows what she's talking about. Mashallah. Uh, that's man, that's amazing because everyone thinks when they go through life and everyone everyone has problems in terms of that affects them, and sometimes it's all about obviously fixing the external environment, and other times is about changing the mindset. Like there's this thing in psychology called CBT. Have you heard of it? Cognitive behavior therapy. Yeah.
Yes, I have.
So like especially when I'm in psychology in college, and we're learning about CBT, and they're talking about it's like therapy, just changing the way of thinking of the patient. And I always relate that to what I learn and what I get from Islam in terms of like qadar. Qadar, do you know what qadar means? Qadar means
Mm,
qadar means like destiny, like things will happen for a reason. So
yes.
yeah, so there's this. So when things happen, it's when things happen or it doesn't happen, it was meant to be or it wasn't meant to be. So that's how I say if something happens to me, or if not necessarily good. Obviously, you hate it in the moment, but you accept it. Okay, it's gone now. What can I do to move forward, and what can I do to move past it? Move past it. But I think the importance is that we never lose touch with our relationship with Allah. You get what I'm trying to
Yes.
say? Like
Yeah.
that is the most important thing, because once you have Allah, yeah, once you have Allah, nobody else matters. Obviously, you need support from other people, but that's the ultimate relationship we're trying to fix. Because if
Yeah.
we are able to fix that, everything else will fall in place. There's
Yeah.
this hadith in which the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, when you try please people, well, the people will Allah will make the people hate you, or
Yeah.
people dislike you, people not to support you. But if you do things just for Allah, Allah will love you and make the people love you. So I feel like what you're doing is like going on to Islam, learning about the religion, making your dua, making your salah, and just trying to build that relationship with Allah. Once you build that relationship with Allah, everything will come true, inshallah.
Yes. And I have to say, the more not efforts, but the more of myself that I put in to my deen and stuff, I noticed everything in life has just kind of started falling into place.
Mm.
The more I've started to pray, the better things have become for me during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's really just been amazing seeing this change. It's kind of like when you go to the gym and but you have to wait a couple of months before you see the results. Here I've just started seeing them immediately, immediately after prayer. I feel amazing, and even waking up early in the morning for prayer, but when you do, you're tired, but straight away afterwards, you feel amazing. You feel like you've accomplished so much, and this you wake up on the right side of the bed, then you would start your day in the correct way, and it's amazing, really. Especially in between prayers, it's like okay, I had my prayer now, and there's X amount of time, until the next prayer, and you're really just thinking about it. You're getting yourself ready, and I'm making sure my daughter's at home, that she's kind of occupied, and I'm about to go and pray. And it's amazing. Really, it just changed my life completely.
Okay, thanks, Martina. I'm going to be running up soon, but I just want to ask you a final question. Uh,
Yes.
what would you like to say to young reverts? Do you have anything to say to young reverts? Uh, Young reverts coming to Islam, especially ones who might have a neglected past, or tough past, or a past with loads of trauma. What would you say to them if they focus and actually? Uh,
Um, the number one thing that I would really say, is if they have come from a tough past, chances are they might have this kind of anger towards the world, as to why did this happen to me. They feel like the world is against them, or they might feel like they cannot trust people. The number one thing that, I would really say is just trust Allah. Really just 100% just trust in the process. What has happened for a reason. It's kind of like you might have, say on it's a Monday, you might have a bad experience with something, and you're very upset, and all you can think about is bad experience. But by the Wednesday, you've kind of forgotten all about it, and you've moved on. You've had a great day. By the Friday, you might have another bad experience. But that is all just a process of life, and just because you might have had a bad experience in the past or something does not mean that you're constantly going to have these bad experiences. And from my own experience with embracing Islam, when I embraced Islam, it's like what has happened in the past to me was not justified, but I understood it.
Mm.
You know, that's why I would say really is to just go into it with an open heart, embrace Islam with an open heart, and think back, to your past with an open heart, and understand it, be gentle and be very kind to yourself. It's not always easy to get over something like that. And a lot of the time, a lot of people who would have had come from a tough past, and experiences, you wouldn't even know. You might be walking on the street, the person walking past you, you don't know what they've got going on their day, So be gentle to yourself, be kind to yourself, and when you feel alone or when you feel upset or when anything at all is going on, just pray, make dua. That's
Mm.
the best thing that I can advise. It's what helped me, and it's what has really just saved me from everything, and whatever past anybody had, that doesn't matter. Like no one is judged on their past. Your past is your past, If anything, like what I look at and what I always say to people is regardless of what kind of past you have, that doesn't matter. What matters is what you have learned from it and what you are
Mm.
doing. Change it now. That is what matters. What matters is, did you take a lesson from it? Are you willing to take the lesson? Are you willing to teach someone else this lesson so that they can hopefully, skip through this lesson? They don't have to experience it. That is
Mm.
what matters. It doesn't matter whether, you were a bad person in the past. Of course, it's tough to I know for myself, for example, to think back to my past and different things that I would have done that were wrong, but what I try and look at now is, okay, I know this was wrong. I understood it, I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong, when I was wrong as well. And I'm trying to make a change now, and that is what matters. What matters is what you are doing now, and don't let anybody tell you, oh, well, your past is X, Y, Z, because with me, when my friends learned about me embracing Islam, they suddenly started taking this whole list of everything that I would have done in my past, They point fingers, they say, oh, well, you have tattoos, you have piercings, you used to drink, you used to smoke, X, Y, Z. Don't let what people say get to you because, like you said earlier, the most important relationship that you can have is the relationship with Allah, because at the end of the day, on the day of judgment, it's not going to be, your friends or your family or your partner or your children who are going to answer for you. It's going to be you that will answer for yourself.
Mm.
So you need to always remember that, and Deen over dunya, and that's what's
Mhm.
important to remember.
Mm. Yeah, this is an amazing conversation, Sister Martina. Subhanallah, Subhanallah. I think I learned a lot in terms of like knowing, okay, what am I doing with? Obviously, I was raised. I didn't was in foster care or wasn't in thing, and I was born Muslim, and so it's just thinking about what have I actually done with it, and trying to appreciate and learn from it, and trying to advocate and help other people as well. So I'm gonna uh, we're gonna stop the podcast. I'm gonna end the Zoom, but I think I might give you some context of some other some other groups. I mean, in terms of like helping like Muslims, and they do like halakas, which are lectures and different things. So you can be part of the Muslim community even more. I'll do that.
I definitely appreciate that, because I won't lie. Sometimes it feels like I'm a little bit of an outcast.
Nah,
It's like,
there's
hey,
no,
let me
no,
let me
no,
into the club.
no. You be by the time I finish, you'd be tired of all the Muslim groups. There's just too many messages. That was an amazing episode. Jazakallah khairan, Sister Martina, and for everyone else who actually made it to the end. This is episode 13. Our ignorance. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment down below. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.